Good morning. Good to see you guys. I hope you had a fantastic 4th of July and didn't blow off any appendages as you were setting off illegal fireworks. I know you're out there, okay? Some of you asked if you could bring them to church, and I was like, no, they're illegal, okay? But we had a good time watching fireworks here, and today we're going to jumpstart a brand new series that's actually going to carry us through the majority of the rest of the summer. The next 8 weeks, we're going to be in this series called The Thing Behind the Thing, why everyone does everything they do. And so if you've ever wondered why anyone does anything, you're welcome for the series. We're going to break it all down over these next few weeks. And today is really an introduction. So you're probably going to leave today being like, man, I want to know more. I have so many questions about this. And that is by design. Hopefully today will give you enough to where you get the concept, you understand where we're going and why you need to be here the following weeks. And I know for a lot of you, you've got vacations planned coming up this summer, as do I. And if you're going to be out, plan to tune in online so that you don't miss a single week of this series, because I really do think that what you're going to learn about yourself and about the other people around you in life is going to transform the way you interact in every single one of your relationships. And so take some notes today. Write down something that stands out to you, that seems interesting to you, something that you want to think more about, look into, or have a discussion about. And if you're taking notes, the title of my message today is Nagging Questions. Nagging Questions. I wonder if you've ever had a moment where you got ready for bed and you snuggled down in bed and you pulled the covers up and you were it was the perfect temperature in your room. I sleep with a fan. Anybody sleep with a fan? Yeah, it is the way, right? Just the buzz is exactly what you need. Just a little breeze going across your face and you're snuggled all the way down and you're tired and you're ready to go to sleep. And just as you get ready to fall asleep, your brain sort of annoyingly pushes this question to the forefront of your mind, and it won't let you let go of it. And maybe it's something important. If you're like me, probably not. It's dumb. It's a dumb thing that your brain wants to know the answer to. It's probably something like, this is what my brain comes up with in the middle of the night, like, was the villain in the original Die Hard, was that guy the same guy as in Harry Potter? Is that who that was? Right? Or I'll start thinking of a song like, it's like, da 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 da, weenie. Well, it's not weenie, is it? What is she saying in that song? Speaking of weenie, is Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World, is he still alive or did he die? I can't remember, but I feel like I need to know. What was the name of the redheaded Fraggle? These are the things that burst into my mind in the middle of the night. And if you're like me, whatever this question is, you're telling yourself, this is not important. I do not need to know this information right now. I can let this go. I've got an early day tomorrow. I've got a lot of things to do. I need to go to sleep. And so you close your eyes even tighter. But in your mind, you're like, is Mr. Feeney dead? I don't know. And eventually, it's all you can think about. It's like the more you try and like push it out of your brain, the more it keeps coming back into your brain. And whatever the question is for you, you're like, I've got to get an answer, because if I don't, I won't be able to fall asleep. Maybe not tonight, maybe not ever. And so you get up angrily out of your bed and you tiptoe into the kitchen where your phone's plugged in, and you Google the answer to this question in your underwear, in the dark, in your kitchen. And when you get the answer to that question that's been bothering you, don't you get this like thrill of sweet relief? Just like, oh, that's what it is. And yet, if you're like me, you don't stop there. You fall down a rabbit hole of additional questions, because you're like, he's not dead. I wonder who he's married to. And then you look that up, and then you're like, yes, I do want to see their Brentwood estate. And you start scrolling through all of this stuff that you just can't stop until somebody comes in the room, like your spouse or one of your kids, and is like, what are you doing? And you're like, you're just holding a phone in your underwear in the living room. And you're like, Feeney, Fraggle. You know, you don't know what to say because you look like a crazy person. Like, what are you doing right there? And the reality of it is, your bizarre behavior in that moment was driven by this nagging question that you felt like you just had to have the answer to. And the thing of it is, we all do weird stuff that happens for reasons that even we don't understand. I wonder if you've ever sort of looked inward and wondered why you were doing something, right? If you've ever thought, like, why is my first initial response to feeling bad wanting to buy something? Like, where is that coming from? What is that about? Why do I keep saying yes to things that I don't want to do and I don't have time to do? And even as you're thinking that, someone's like, do you want to go here on Friday? And you're like, uh-huh. And your brain's like, that's what I'm talking about. What are you doing? And you're like, why do I do this? Why do I feel like I need to prove that I can do this thing on my own when I clearly need help? And I could go on because we've all found ourselves in the act of impulsivity, right? We can see that we're being impulsive, but we can't stop it. It almost feels at these moments like something else is calling the shots. Like we don't want to do what we're doing, but we don't really have a choice. And other people are watching our behavior, like someone coming into the kitchen to find you Googling in the dark, and they look at whatever impulsive thing you're doing in the moment that seems logical, and they're like, why did you do that? And you're like, I don't know, but it felt like I had to. And we all do this. In fact, the Apostle Paul did this, and he's way better than you, okay? He says this in Romans chapter 7, verse 15. He says, I don't understand myself. I want to do what's right, but I don't. Instead, I do what I hate. Verse 19, I want to do what's good, but I don't. I don't want to do what's wrong, but I do. And I feel like I'm not really the one doing it. Does this feel familiar to you? Like you catch yourself in the middle of an impulsive moment where you have like sort of done something and you're like, why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that. That was a little bit crazy. And part of the reason we identify with what Paul is saying in here so deeply is that he's describing something primal, something under the surface that is driving his thoughts, feelings, and actions that he hasn't been able to quite name yet. But he can see that whatever this thing is that's pushing him to do the things he does is clearly sabotaging him. And he hates it, but he doesn't know what to do about it. And this isn't just something that ancient theologians talk about. It's something that science points to as well. In fact, modern science corroborates this. Research by Emma Young that was published in New Science magazine estimated that 95% of our lives are lived unconsciously. This means that most of us, most of the time, are living by default, not design. That we are living according to our impulses, not our intentions. And I think this brings up a really important question. If a lot of us are sort of sleepwalking through our stories, doing things that make sense to us in the moment until we question them, and even then we're confused, what is driving these impulses? What shaped them and formed them? Where do they come from? Like, what is the thing behind the thing? And I think everyone at their core is attempting to get an affirming answer to a single primal question. It's not anything you can Google because these questions aren't informational, they're existential. And when they hang in the air, they eat away at your insides like no other question can. They're the things that we wish we could enter into a search engine because we hate even admitting to them out loud. They're things like, do people really like me for me? Or just for what they can get from me? Or just when I play along or play by the rules? Does anything I do actually make a difference in the real world? Like, does my life matter? Or would everything just sort of go on the same if I were gone? Do the people that I really love, do they love me back? Or am I just sending love out into the universe and it's just sort of fading away because maybe there's something wrong with me that I don't deserve love, or that people can't find a way to love me in return? You can't enter these questions into Google because it will get confused. Siri doesn't know the answer to these questions. And these questions are why some of us, we don't like sitting with our thoughts. This is why some of us try and stay busy as much as possible, because if we were to sit in silence and let our brain actually think about the questions at the bottom of our soul, like we would experience this significant wave of fear and sadness. These questions scare us. Research by thought leader Mike Foster has pinpointed 7 primal questions that are at the core of every single human heart. And that's the subject of this series. And while we can trace all of these to some level in all of our lives, there's one that resonates with every single one of us deeper than the rest. It's the soul level fear responsible for the majority of our triggers and choices and actions. And so this is what this series stands to ask you. What is your primal question? What is that thing on a gut level that if you were to slow down and look inside is actually responsible for why you get frustrated, why you get scared, why you choose the things you do, why you do the things you do? What is that thing for you? What is the thing that's behind the thing driving everything? By the way, whatever it is, it's not bad, right? But it can do a lot of damage when you don't know what it is. Like when you have no idea what's driving you, you will make the worst possible decisions because you don't know why you're doing what you do. And the goal really isn't to eradicate these questions in our soul, but to identify them, to understand them, and to learn how to make them work for us, not against us. And I'm sure you're wondering, like, that's great, but like, where did they come from? Like, how did they get in there? And the book of Genesis talks about this goblin. I'm just kidding, you guys. There's no goblin. I think we all want this like fantasy, right? Or there's some like profound reason why we have these questions at the core of who we are. But the way that thing got there was through your childhood, like every weird thing about you. And here's why. Our brains develop faster in the first 5 years of our life than at any other time of our existence. And this is where the foundations of your identity and your behavior and your beliefs are established, which means the people who raised you significantly shaped your understanding of love, safety, and belonging. Like those early experiences imprint on you, they follow you into adulthood, and they end up subconsciously steering how you experience, interpret, and interact with every single relationship you have. Who you are now has a great deal to do with not what your caregivers thought of you, but like how they treated you, often with little understanding of the messages that their behavior was sending or the profound impact that they were having. In fact, a lot of us, our parents actually really deeply loved us, but they had no idea, or maybe they didn't have an ability to demonstrate that in a way that made sense to us. Each primal question that we're gonna spend some time on in this series represents a core human need. And as a child, when that need gets met, its corresponding question is answered with a yes. And when the need isn't met, the child who's hearing this, that question gets answered with a no or like a who knows. And that question imprints on you, and it creates a lifelong desperation in you to meet the need and to answer the question. And this results in us as we grow up as adults, when you feel like you're getting a yes to your primal question from others, you couldn't be more at peace with the world, with others, with your life. But when you don't get a yes to that question, you panic and your soul swells with anxiety and you scramble to do whatever you think you have to do to turn that no to a yes. You do things that you never thought you would do, things that you are not proud of in your life because your primal question drives you to do it. And I want to give you guys an example this morning of this happening from the life of a famous biblical character so you can sort of follow along and see how this plays out in somebody's real life. This is in the book of Exodus, chapter 2, in case you want to check and see if it really is in the Bible or if I'm making it up. Exodus chapter 2, starting in verse 2, says this: "A woman gave birth to a son. She saw he was special, but she was scared for his life. And when she could no longer hide him, she put the baby in a basket and floated him down the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe, and when she saw the basket and the baby, she felt sorry for him. 'This must be one of the Hebrew children,' she said, and so she adopted him as her own son and named him Moses." So there's a lot of information here that we can peel apart. And I think probably the first big question that I would have if I were you is like, why is this mom so scared? And the context you need to understand the story is, at this time in history, the Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt. And Pharaoh, who's the leader of the Hebrews, declared that all the Hebrew baby boys be drowned at birth. Pretty extreme. The reason he did this is because he's afraid of a revolt. These people probably don't enjoy being enslaved. And what if they grow up and decide they want to overthrow us? They're coming to outnumber us. That becomes fearful. And so the mom, she's hoping that the river raft plan will save this little boy. Although, logically, it's probably more likely that he gets eaten by a crocodile. I mean, if you just think it through. Or a hippopotamus, or a number of creatures that are at the edge of this river. Ironically, the person who finds him, right, is the daughter of the guy who demanded that all the Hebrew babies be put to death, which is like the ultimate teenage rebellion. Like, Dad, remember how you said you wished all these people died? I adopted one. Meet your grandson. And he's like, oh, my daughter. Brilliant move on her part. So I want to just pause here and get you to think about what it would feel like to be these people in this story. Think about this kid growing up and all of the questions he would have about his life, about who he really is, about where he's from, about why his mom gave him up when he was just a baby, about why he was really adopted, about why his grandpa hates his people so much, about whether or not his grandpa hates him too. Imagine how that would feel. Imagine how much wonder and worry that would produce in him over his safety and worth and wantedness in the world. Imagine how confused he might grow up. And somewhere in these formative years of Moses growing up, his primal question chooses him. And this is how it happens. We don't pick it, it picks us. This question, whose answer he was convinced was a no. One that would continue to be asked by him his entire life. One that would drive him to really destructive behavior in an attempt to turn that no to a yes. He would find himself in the middle of moments where he's like, what just happened? What did I just do? Why did I do that? But it was being driven by something deep inside him. Like, this is one of the destructive things he did as a result of his primal question. This is in Exodus chapter 2, verse 11. It says this: "When Moses had grown up, he left the palace to visit the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were forced to work. He saw an Egyptian beating one of his people, and he killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand." So some of you are like, oh, so really destructive, right? This is like the most destructive you can possibly get. He unexpectedly murders a guy. And if you look at the life of Moses, he's not really the murdering type. So what came over him? What caused him to do something that was actually somewhat uncharacteristic? I think this moment is about more than the pain he's witnessing. It's about the pain that he's been carrying his whole life. It surfaces all of these feelings in him. When he watches this scene unfold, it brings up inside of him all of his feelings of not belonging and not being wanted himself and not being allowed to be himself. And it all rushes out of him in one singular blind rage. Now, obviously, you're not going to murder someone. I mean, probably not. I hope not. I don't know all of you. Some of you could be sitting next to a murderer right now. Probably not, though. I don't want to freak you out. But like, you've got your thing, right? You've got your stuff. What I do know is that when your primal question goes unanswered, you scramble. We all do. But maybe yours takes on the form of depression or isolation or addiction or people-pleasing or ignoring your own needs or pursuing another relationship as quick as you possibly can, or taking on a brand new hobby that you feel like is going to make you feel normal again. This is called primal avoidance. It's whatever way you subtly sabotage opportunities for your primal question to be answered with a yes out of fear of getting a no. In other words, you'd rather not ask the question than risk an unwanted answer. And this is like why we find ourselves doing things that don't really even make sense to us. This is why we flat out lie to people, where they're like, do you want some help? And we really do, and we're like, no, I'm good. Because if we say we do want help and they don't help us, that's going to feel wounding. We don't want to get a no, and so we don't even ask the question. This is why when people are like, are you okay? And we're like, yep. And on the inside, we're like, I'm dying. Help. We're too afraid of the rejection in the moment to actually be honest. We're primally avoiding whatever it is we really want. We're preventing ourselves from getting what we want by pretending that we don't actually need what we need. It's like we're trying to convince ourselves and the people around us that like this thing that I can't survive without, it's not really important. I don't really need it. It's not that big a deal, even though it is. And when you look back on these moments, you wonder the same thing that Moses and Paul did. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? What came over me in that moment? Where did that come from? What is the thing behind the thing that drove me to do that thing? And what do I do now? And the answer for Moses was, run away. He just ran away. He wanders specifically in the desert for 40 years. And then God intervenes. He catches his attention with this burning bush, and he tells Moses he's destined to deliver the Hebrews from slavery. It says this in Exodus chapter 3, verse 11, when God approaches him and says, this is what I see your purpose as being. This is what I want you to do. It says, Moses protested, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? If they ask me, what would I tell them? And I want to be really clear about what is happening here. It's not that Moses doesn't believe in God. It's that Moses doesn't believe in himself. His primal question is this insecurity deep inside of him that he can't seem to shake, even when God is on his side. He's never really believed from the time that he was young that anybody ever wanted him. And so if nobody else has ever wanted him, why would God want him? That doesn't make any sense to him. You see, our primal questions are so loud that they have the ability of drowning out every other voice in our life, including God's. This is how powerful these things are within us. In fact, these things are so imprinted on us that they form the filter through which we see everything. Regardless of what is really going on, regardless of what something is actually about for you, it always appears to be about your primal question. And for you, it is. In other words, it's not really about the raise. It's about whether or not you're enough. It's not about what they said in that moment. It's about whether or not you're safe. It's not about the invite that they didn't extend. It's about whether you're wanted. It's not about what they spent. It's about whether or not you are secure. And here's the reality of all of this. No matter what your question is, only God can give you the answer you're looking for. And some of us, this is why life is so complicated, because we are trying to get from everyone else what we can really only ever get from God. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, it says, God replies to Moses. Remember, Moses is like, well, what do I tell them? He says, tell them I sent you. That Yahweh, the God of our ancestors, sent you. Tell them that. And essentially what God is saying in this moment, when Moses brings his primal question of feeling like he doesn't deserve to be in the room, that he's not wanted, that he is somebody that nobody really wants around or would pick for anything, when he's bringing all that insecurity to God, God is telling him, even though they didn't want you, I want you. Even though they didn't think that you were enough, you're enough for me. Even though they never get you or understand you, I've always gotten you. You make perfect sense to me. Even though they didn't protect you when they should have, I am looking out for you. When you allow God to do this for you and you choose to believe him, it transforms your primal question into a primal truth. In other words, your question becomes a declaration. Am I becomes I am. You become insistent on what you were always insecure of, and you're able to step into who you were always made to be. And what happens is that Moses leaves this conversation that he has with God. He confidently marches back to the city that he once left in shame, and he commands the most powerful person in the world to take him seriously and do the right thing. And he doesn't just do it once. He does it 9 times back to back. Because God answered his primal question with a yes. He refused to allow anybody else's opinion or any other obstacle to shake his confidence or keep him from his calling. Because he discovered that knowing why you do what you do is the key to doing better. And this is true of you and me too. Knowing why you do what you do is the key to doing better. Otherwise, you're just scrambling for reasons you don't understand. You don't know what to take to God to ask him to fulfill in you because you don't even know what's driving you. And when Moses is able to identify this, God is able to answer it within him, and everything changes for him. The Apostle Paul says it this way in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. He says, be careful how you live. Make the most of every opportunity. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. In other words, God is saying, listen, live by design, not by default. Live intentionally, not impulsively. Don't drift through life allowing your past trauma to dictate your story. Don't waste the opportunities that God is giving to you. And what is it that God wants you to do? To give to others what you never got. And that's what's called your primal gift. the ability to give to other people what you never got. Moses never felt like he was wanted. And what I think is so interesting is, as he steps into what God has called him to do and believes that God wants him, he assigns a specific nickname to the people that he leaves out of slavery from Egypt. He calls them the chosen ones. It's not a coincidence that the guy who never felt like he was wanted tells the slaves to hold their head up high because they're chosen, that they are wanted. He gives to them something he never felt like he got. This is an ability that we have when God begins to answer our primal question for us. We get the supernatural capability of being able to help other people see that God is answering it for them too. He gives them what he never got. He's speaking over them what God spoke to him. What about you? What's driving you? What unmet need are you trying to get answered? What is it that makes you scramble? Because I think knowing why you do what you do is the key to you doing better. And that's why you need this series. And so here's your homework. It's very simple for today. To take the assessment. We've actually created an assessment online that you can take. It originated with Mike Foster and his research team. You can get to it by scanning this code or just pulling up our website, southhills.org, and it'll take you right to the quiz, and you can take it anytime you want to this week. But I want you to take the assessment to discover your primal question, and I want you to keep showing up to discover what to do about it, because just knowing isn't enough. Now that I know, what do I do? And that's what we want to spend the next 7 weeks helping you understand. If you have one of the invite cards, or you can jump online and see the order we're going to cover these questions, but you don't need to just know how to navigate yours. You need to know how to navigate the questions of those around you. And if you could know what drives your coworkers, your kids, your spouse, your best friend, it sets you up to live life on a higher level, to understand them, to give them compassion, to know how to help them, to keep yourself from hurting them. The better we know, the better we do. And that's what I want to pray into your life today, is that as you uncover what your question is, that you would keep showing up to know what to do with it. But even more than that, you would take that thing to God and say, God, show me how to get from you what I've been trying to get from everybody else. Would you bow your heads across this room this morning? I want to pray for you all, but I want to pray maybe for a few of you specifically, and with your heads bowed and eyes closed, maybe you today are in a place where you're like, man, this speaks to me. I don't know everything else you're going to unpack in this series, but I do know this. There's a desperation and a pain at the core of my being that I don't know how to figure out. And I've tried to take it to romantic partners, and I've tried to take it to my parents, and I've tried to take it to my boss, and I've tried to project it onto my friends, and it's not working. And maybe today you are finally willing to sort of surrender and to say, like, God, I need you to answer the deepest questions in me so I can stop sabotaging myself. We call it saying yes to Jesus. It's the beginning of a new kind of life. It's deciding that you are going to prioritize following Jesus over following your destructive impulses. And if you're at a place today where you're like, man, that's what I need, I need to realign my life with something bigger than me, with a God who loves me and will forgive me and who will show me how to live from here. If that's you, would you just slip a hand up? I want to pray for you specifically this morning. I'm not going to call you out. I'm not going to embarrass you in any way. I just want to know who I'm praying for this morning. Today is a new beginning for you. A day when a part of the scramble can stop and God can put you on a path to make you whole again. God, I know you see every single hand in this place. I know you see what is going on in the depths of their hearts and souls. I know you see all of the many ways that they have tried to fix and fill themselves. And I know you have seen it crash and burn. God, your heart breaks along with theirs. You know the exact situations in their formative years that led them to continue to ask this question over and over and over again in life. And you've seen all of the destructive ways that they've tried to get a yes. And God, it is you who can step in and say, they may not have wanted you, but I want you. They may say that you are purposeless, but I have a purpose for you. You may not have gotten the love that you wanted and needed from them, but I have all of the love that you could ever need that I will shower on you. They may not have protected you, but I'm looking out for you. You may have always felt insecure in your situation coming up, but I have got all the security that you need because I am in charge of the universe. I see you. I love you. I created you. I'm looking out for you. I have what you need. I am who you need. And God, I pray that as we go to you, as we lean on you, as we trust in you, that the anxiety will be tamped down, that our faith will arise, that our trust in you will strengthen, and our ability to be who you have always intended us to be would become the clearest thing about us, that like Moses, we'll hold our head up high, that we will pursue you and what you have called us to do, and we wouldn't be sidetracked by the scramble that causes us to spin out. God, make us new. In Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said, amen, amen.